Imagine opening your eyes in a world where the night sky never revealed its secrets, a world where the heavens remained an untouched canvas, and humanity moved forward without ever knowing what truly waited above them. That's the world we enter today. And before we begin, take a moment to subscribe, because this story leads us into a version of history most people have never imagined, and you won't want to miss the worlds hidden behind the next twist. The story starts with a quiet lensmaker in the late 1500s, an era when curiosity was dangerous and the universe was still believed to be small and predictable. His name was Hans Lippershey, the man credited with creating the first practical telescope. He shaped a pair of lenses in a way no one had thought to do before, creating a device that let distant objects leap closer. That small leap created the single greatest turning point in human understanding of the cosmos. But what if that invention had never existed? What if no one had ever pointed a tube of glass toward the sky and seen the truth waiting in the dark? To understand what we lose, we first have to understand what the telescope gave us. With that simple device, humanity suddenly broke out of its shell. Galileo lifted it toward Jupiter and saw its moons, proof that not everything revolved around Earth. The discovery forced humanity to rewrite the rules of existence. But in our alternate path, Galileo never receives a telescope. He remains a brilliant mind trapped within the limits of the naked eye. He spends his life sketching ideas he can never fully test, debating theories he can never prove. The spark that ignited the scientific revolution never catches fire. In this altered world, the Earth remains the unmoving center of the universe for far longer. Religious authorities maintain absolute dominance over cosmic explanations. Students learn skies filled with perfect spheres and divine order. Because no one has the means to challenge the old worldview, human understanding becomes a pond instead of an ocean. The idea of a vast, expanding universe stays buried in silence. Without the telescope, early navigation also takes a darker path. Explorers sail blind in ways we can barely imagine today. The instruments that guided ships across continents were deeply connected to astronomical observations. No telescope means inaccurate charts, more lost ships, slower trade routes, and far fewer connections between nations. Entire cultures develop in deeper isolation. The world grows together much later, altering politics, economics, and even the way empires rise and fall. And while the telescope opened the sky, it also opened the ground. That's the part most people forget. The same principles that allowed scientists to peer into the heavens eventually helped create microscopes. Imagine medicine without microscopes. Germ theory arrives centuries late. Doctors remain unaware of the invisible world causing disease. Epidemics spread with brutal force. Populations grow more slowly. Entire cities are shaped by superstitions instead of scientific understanding. Humanity's average lifespan stalls, unable to break free from the unseen threats it can never study. But let's drift further into this alternate past. Picture Isaac Newton, a mind powerful enough to reshape physics itself, yet forced to work without the tools that inspired him. Without telescopic data, the motion of planets remains mysterious. The perfect mathematics of gravity stays hidden, and Newton's work becomes smaller, less revolutionary. The chain reaction of scientific breakthroughs that defined the Enlightenment simply never ignites. By the time we reach the 19th century in this alternate timeline, the world is decades behind our own. Factories grow slowly. Electricity spreads reluctantly. Communication technologies appear late, tangled in a world without the cosmic perspective that drove humanity's hunger for answers. A delay in astronomy becomes a delay in physics, which becomes a delay in engineering, which reshapes everything from transportation to warfare. Then something even stranger happens. Without early telescopes, no one discovers the rings of Saturn or the swirling storms of Jupiter. Mythology remains tied to the sky far longer than science. People attach old meanings to stars, weaving stories instead of searching for evidence. Human imagination grows, but human understanding shrinks. Dreams become louder than discoveries. Pause here for a moment. Think of all the inventions that required precise optics: cameras, film, satellites, glasses, laser technology, even the phone in your pocket. Without the birth of the telescope, optical science develops much later, perhaps centuries later. That delay shifts everything. No satellites circling Earth, no images of distant galaxies, no weather forecasting from space, no GPS guiding daily life. Humanity's sense of direction, both literal and intellectual, becomes foggy and unsure. This is the world where the sky remains untouchable. And yet the most profound loss of all isn't technology, it's perspective. The telescope didn't just show us planets. It showed us how small we truly are. It humbled an entire species. It forced humanity to step outside its own shadow and confront a universe that doesn't revolve around us. In the world without telescopes, that humbling never happens. Humanity walks taller, but more blindly, convinced of its own importance. Empires become more aggressive. Wars become more ideological. Nations cling to a worldview without cosmic context. At this point in our alternate timeline, the consequences become so deeply rooted that by the modern age, humanity is hundreds of years behind in astronomy. The idea of visiting the moon looks like fantasy, not science. Space exploration becomes a distant dream instead of a childhood ambition. The sky turns from a frontier to a ceiling. And now the question deepens. If the telescope had never been invented, would humanity ever discover space at all? Or would we live our entire existence believing the universe is nothing more than what our eyes can see? As this alternate world moves into the modern era, something unusual unfolds. Science tries to stretch forward, but every field keeps crashing into barriers that telescopes once helped us break. Humanity has theories about the universe, but without centuries of observation to support them, progress crawls. Physicists build equations they cannot fully test. Engineers design devices blind to the cosmic forces that shape reality. Discoveries that once came from the stars now emerge from guesswork, slow experimentation, and ideas that never quite fit together. A strange cultural divide begins to form. On one side are thinkers who believe the universe must be vast, governed by laws larger than anything on Earth. On the other side are those who insist the heavens are simple and fixed, just as early civilizations imagined. This divide grows sharper because there are no images of galaxies, no proof of other worlds, no cosmic storms, no expanding universe. Everything remains theoretical. Everything remains arguable. Humanity debates the sky with the same uncertainty early people had when they whispered myths around firelight. In this version of history, the 20th century becomes a century of delayed awakening. The great observatories never appear on mountaintops. No astronomers track the slow dance of galaxies. Einstein still emerges, brilliant as ever, but the foundations beneath his work are weaker. Without data from deep space, relativity becomes an odd mathematical idea, admired but not fully believed. The world sees him as a visionary, but not as someone who rewrote the universe. Science loses momentum because it lacks proof, the kind that once came from the light of stars captured through glass and mirrors. Meanwhile, wars unfold under a sky humanity barely understands. Technology grows in bursts instead of floods. Radar appears late, satellites are dismissed as unrealistic fantasies. Weather prediction remains primitive, making storms and hurricanes far deadlier. Navigation systems stay basic, pushing global travel back decades. Nations stay more isolated, timelines of cooperation shift, and alliances take different shapes. The world map changes because the sky stayed hidden. In this timeline, the space race never truly begins. There is no photograph of Earth rising over the lunar horizon, no spark that unites humanity under a single image of a fragile blue world. Instead, nations look inward, focusing on land rather than stars. Space remains an empty word. Rockets are built for war, not exploration. Humanity never sends probes to the outer planets, never listens for signals beyond Earth, never wonders whether other civilizations might be looking back. And yet, curiosity never dies. Deep in universities, small groups of scientists begin pushing for something different. They design crude instruments, early attempts to magnify the sky. These devices are far weaker than our history's telescopes, but they represent the first cracks in centuries of darkness. The world resists at first, calling their work unnecessary, expensive, even foolish. But slowly, these faint images of the moon and nearby planets begin to reshape thought. Questions grow louder. Doubt spreads. Human imagination senses a shift. Then one day, in the early 21st century of this alternate world, a breakthrough arrives. A team of researchers creates a device strong enough to reveal the moons of Jupiter, repeating Galileo's discovery 400 years late. The revelation shakes the world. People gather in streets, universities, and public squares to see the first blurred images of Jupiter's orbiting companions. For the first time, humanity witnesses evidence that Earth is not unique, that celestial bodies move according to rules bigger than human belief. The moment becomes a cultural earthquake. The discovery ignites a delayed scientific revolution. Physics finds new energy. Mathematics expands. Students rush to study astronomy, hungry to uncover truths lost for generations. For the first time in human history, the idea of the universe as a vast and dynamic place becomes undeniable. It changes how people see themselves, how nations treat each other, how cultures interpret their place in existence. But the delay has consequences. Even with new tools, humanity must climb a steep hill. While our timeline built massive observatories, radio telescopes, and space agencies, this alternate world must start almost from scratch. Countries debate whether to invest in space or focus on Earth's problems. Climate change hits harder because satellite monitoring arrived too late. Global cooperation struggles to form. The dream of reaching the moon now appears to be centuries away rather than decades. Yet something remarkable begins to happen. The moment people see the moons of Jupiter, hope returns. Curiosity spreads through classrooms. Children stare at the sky with a sense of wonder their ancestors never had. Citizens demand new scientific programs. Engineers begin designing rockets not as weapons but as ladders toward the unknown. A new cultural movement forms, built around the shared desire to reclaim the universe humanity lost for so long. In the middle of this awakening, one question rises above all others. If the telescope had never been invented until now, what future could humanity create from this late start? Would nations unite to explore the cosmos? Would new ideas bloom faster because of the centuries of pent-up curiosity? Or would old beliefs cling tightly and slow progress even more? The alternate world faces an unfamiliar challenge. Instead of centuries spent slowly building knowledge, it is now overwhelmed with discoveries all at once. Exoplanets, star clusters, the structure of galaxies, concepts introduced carefully over generations in our timeline now arrive in a single burst. Society must adjust at high speed. Education systems reinvent themselves. Religions reinterpret the heavens. Governments race to catch up with the reality above their heads. Slowly, humanity begins to understand that the universe is not a calm place. It is filled with violence and beauty, with exploding stars and drifting dust, with planets forming and dying. This knowledge reshapes human behavior. People feel smaller, but in a way that brings them closer. Borders feel thinner, conflicts feel less important. The shared sky becomes a unifying force. Then a deeper truth emerges. With every discovery, humanity realizes how much time it has lost. Generations that once could have walked on the moon never had the chance. Scientists who might have transformed the world died without seeing the cosmos. Entire eras of progress simply vanished. The world feels a mixture of wonder and regret, excitement and loss. And that is the heart of this alternate reality. A world without the first telescope is not a world without brilliance or curiosity. It is a world that learns too late what it could have discovered early. It is a world that feels the weight of centuries in a single glance at the sky. It is a world that discovers the universe the way some people discover old photographs of their family, beautiful, breathtaking, and filled with stories that can never be relived. Before we return to our own timeline, take a moment to subscribe, because every what if opens another hidden path in history, and each path reveals something new about the world we live in now. In our real history, the first telescope was more than a tool. It was humanity's first bridge to the stars. It shaped navigation, medicine, physics, exploration, culture, and identity. It taught us to question, to imagine, and to reach further than our eyes could see. And the next time you look at the night sky, remember that everything we know about it began with a simple decision. Someone lifted a piece of glass toward the heavens, hoping to see a little farther than before.